The shuttle hissed as it landed on the smooth surface of the Varelian royal platform. The sky above was a strange mix of violet and silver, and giant crystal towers reached high above the clouds. It was not Earth, not even close. Second Lieutenant Evan Reyes stepped out, wearing a formal black and blue uniform with the Earth Alliance symbol on his chest. He adjusted the collar nervously. This was not just any mission, it was the first peaceful contact between humans and the powerful Varelian Empire. And he had been chosen as the youngest human envoy to represent Earth in the Varelian royal court. As Evan walked forward, he noticed the silence. Not the silence of empty space, but the silence of many eyes watching him. Dozens of Varelians stood still around the landing zone. Tall, elegant beings with smooth violet skin, glowing white eyes, and shining robes. Their movements were graceful, almost like floating water. They were beautiful, mysterious, and clearly judging him. Evan held his posture. He wasn't here to impress them with strength. He was here to show respect. "Welcome, human," said a tall male Varelian standing in front. His voice was deep but calm. "I am High Advisor Creel. The Empress will receive you shortly." "Thank you, High Advisor," Evan said, and bowed slightly. "It's an honor to be here." Without another word, Creel turned and began walking. Evan followed him into the palace's enormous hall made of living crystal that pulsed with faint blue light as he walked. Evan noticed artwork on the walls, scenes of Varelian history, great battles, celestial events, and what looked like rituals involving glowing symbols and deep eye contact. They passed through multiple gates, guarded by silent Varelian warriors. No one spoke, but Evan felt something, sensation, like someone watching him, not with hostility, but curiosity. Suddenly, they turned into a garden chamber. Bright flowers floated in midair, and silver-winged creatures fluttered above water. Fountains, and that's when he saw her. She stood near a large flowering tree, holding a staff of crystal and light. Her armor was ceremonial white and gold, and it shimmered with every movement. Her long silver hair flowed down her back, and her sharp eyes locked onto him the moment he entered. Princess Zira Evan recognized her from the briefings. First daughter of the Empress. A warrior. A leader. And not exactly known for being fond of humans, she took a step forward, her voice firm but graceful. "So, this is the human the Empress allowed into our palace." Evan kept his expression respectful. "Second Lieutenant Evan Reyes, Earth Alliance. I come in peace." Zira tilted, her head slightly. "Of course you do. All humans say that, till they don't." Evan smiled, trying to hide his nervousness. "I promise I'm not here to break anything." She frowned and walked a little closer. "You're smaller than I expected. You're taller than I imagined," he said without thinking. For a moment, there was silence. Then was that a hint of a smile at the corner of her lips? But it vanished quickly. She moved closer, now only a few feet away. Zara's voice became softer, but sharper. "Why are you looking at me like that, human?" Evan blinked. I'm not sure what you mean." "Your eyes," she said. "You look as if you're trying to see something deeper." Evan hesitated. "I guess I'm just trying to understand who you really are. Not just the title, not just the armor. Just you." Zara's eyes narrowed. She'd been trained to recognize lies. But this didn't feel like one. She stared into his eyes, and then a strange wave passed through her body, faint vibration in the air. The sound of her heartbeat slowed. Colors in the garden shimmered and bent slightly. She felt something shift inside her chest, something ancient, something that should not awaken. Zira stepped back suddenly, her breath short. Her pupils shimmered for a second as her body tried to fight off the sensation. Her hand touched her temple. No. This can't be happening. What? "What's wrong?" Evan asked, concerned. She looked at him again, this time with a mix of fear and wonder. She whispered, "Oh no." And then she turned and left the chamber without another word. Later that night, Zira stood in front of an old temple mirror deep inside the palace. Her face was calm, but her mind was spinning. She had looked into the eyes of a human, and something looked back. Not just him, but the bond, the Varelian soul resonance, the deep spiritual connection that only formed once in a lifetime. It was rare even among her own kind, and deadly if rejected. She had heard the stories growing up. If a soul bond begins, and one side runs from it, the body starts to weaken. The mind becomes cloudy. Connection only grows stronger with timeless. Both sides sever it willingly. But how could this happen with a human? She clenched her fists. This bond, this impossible connection, could ruin everything. Her role in the empire, her duties, her people's trust. No one would accept it. No one would believe it. And the human had no idea. Zaria turned away from the mirror. She needed to speak with the Empress. Meanwhile, Zaria sat in his guest quarters. He stared at the alien stars outside. The window, something about the princess stayed in his mind. Not just her beauty or pride, but the look in her eyes. When she stared at him, it was like she had seen something she wasn't ready for. He touched his chest. He didn't understand why. But for some reason, he felt connected, not romantically, not emotionally, but in a way he couldn't explain. Like a thread had been tied between them. He didn't know it yet, but that thread was real, and it was pulling tighter. Princess Zyra stood in front of the Empress, her head lowered but her voice steady. The royal chamber was quiet, filled with pale blue light from the floating crystals above. Ancient symbols glowed on the walls, symbols that had not been spoken, aloud in generations. You looked into his eyes? The Empress asked softly, her tone unreadable. Yes, Zaria replied, her jaw tight. But it was only for a moment. It wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't mean to. You know what that means? The Empress said. The resonance may have begun. Zaria closed her eyes. I felt it. Just a spark. But it was there. Empress, tall and wise, looked down at her daughter with a heavy expression. And the human? He doesn't know. I don't think he even felt anything, Zaria said quickly. He just, looked at me, as if I was someone worth knowing. Not a princess, not an alien, just, me. There was silence between them for a long moment. You must stay away from him, the Empress said at last. You know the danger. If the bond forms completely, it will change everything. But it's already started, it can still be broken, the Empress said. If you do not strengthen it, if you keep your distance. If you resist? Zaira nodded slowly, but something inside her heart whispered, what if I don't want to resist? Evan's quarters. Royal guest Wing Evan sat alone at the edge of his bed, staring at the crystal ceiling. He couldn't sleep every time he closed. His eyes, he saw her face, Zaria, the way she had looked at him, the way her voice changed when she whispered, oh no. It wasn't just shock, it was fear, but why? He stood and walked to the window, watching the glowing skies outside. The stars on this world were larger, brighter, and somehow, familiar. He couldn't explain it, but since arriving, something felt different. Like the air itself carried a song he couldn't hear, but could somehow feel. A soft chime rang from the wall. A voice spoke. You are invited to attend the Festival of Still Lights in the courtyard. Presence is optional. A public festival. Maybe it would help him clear his head. Or maybe he'd see her again. The Festival of Still Lights, the courtyard, was glowing with floating lanterns, soft spheres of light that hovered above the ground. Music drifted through the air, a mix of alien instruments and crystal chimes. Varelians danced slowly, moving like wind and water. Their robes shimmered in the night. Evan stood near a corner, unsure if he belonged, and then he saw her. Zira stood on a high balcony, her formal armor replaced by a flowing robe of silver and pale blue. Her hair was loose, her face combut. Her eyes were scanning the crowd, and then they locked with his. Neither of them moved at first then. Slowly she descended the stairs toward him. The crowd seemed to part for her, or maybe it was just his imagination. She stood a few feet away, looking at him carefully. You came. I wasn't sure if I should, Evan admitted. After earlier, I thought maybe you didn't want to see me. Zira hesitated. Didn't, but I came anyway. They stood in silence. Finally, Evan spoke. I don't know what I did, but something happened when you looked at me, didn't it? Zira looked away. You wouldn't understand. Try me. She turned. Back to him. Your people believe in science, logic, data. But my people, we also believe in something deeper. The soul. Evan nodded slowly. We have words like that too. Connection, fate. Things we can't fully explain. Zira took a step closer. Among my kind, there is something called a resonance bond. It is extremely rare. Two minds, two souls. Meeting in perfect balance, it forms a link. A connection that cannot be broken easily. And you think that happened between us? Evan asked quietly. I know it started, Zira said. Whoa. And if it grows stronger, we will be able to feel each other's emotions, see each other's thoughts, even ... share pain. Evan swallowed. That's a lot. Yes. And dangerous. She said quickly. My people will never accept it. The bond has never formed between a Varelian and a human. Then maybe it's time something new happened. Soraya stared at him, surprised. You're not afraid? She asked. I'm more afraid of not knowing who I really am supposed to be, Evan said. And I don't think I met you by accident. Zira stepped back. You don't understand. If this continues, you will be in danger. And so will I. He looked at her seriously. Then we figure it out, together. For a moment, the glow around them seemed to brighten, and far above. Unseen by all, one of the floating crystals cracked softly a sign, long forgotten. A true bond had begun. The attack just as the music reached its peak, a sudden explosion. Shook the courtyard. Flames burst from the western wall. Screams echoed. Varelians scattered. Evan turned, reaching for a weapon he didn't have. Zira was already moving. She summoned a long blade of glowing crystal from her wrist cuff and pulled Evan behind her. Stay with me, she ordered. 3 cloaked figures appeared from the smoke. Assassins, not common criminals, trained warriors. They moved fast. Zira fought them like flowing fire. Her blade danced through the air, blocking every strike, her face calm but fierce. Evan grabbed a fallen guard's. Energy Batana joined her. He wasn't as fast, but he was smart. He flanked one of the attackers and knocked them off balance. Zira glanced at him mid-fight. For a moment, she felt something strange pride. He fought like a true ally. Together, they defeated the 3 attackers. One tried to escape, but Zira threw her blade. Pinning his arm to the wall, guards rushed in moments later. The Empress herself arrived, surrounded by soldiers. She looked at Zira and Evan standing together, bruised, breathless, and unshaken. You protected him, the Empress said to her daughter. Zira nodded. Yes, and he protected me. That night, Zira stood alone in her room, staring at the stars. The fight had proven something she was trying to deny. The bond was real. It wasn't just magic. It was strength. Together, they had survived something meant to kill them, and she had felt his pain when he got hit. She had felt his fear and his calm. The resonance was growing faster than she thought. A chime rang. Enter, she said softly. Evan stepped in, his face serious. He held a folded piece of cloth. It was one of her robes. You dropped this? Zira took it without a word. Then Evan said, You told me the bond is rare, but I think it's not a curse. It's a chance. She didn't speak. He continued, I want to stay, not just for peace talks, not just for duty. I want to stay because of you. Zira closed her eyes. She could already feel his heartbeat echo inside her chest. Then stay, she whispered. They stood there in silence. The stars watching over them. The bond had begun. Princess Zira walked beside Evan down the narrow glass bridge that connected the inner palace to the Hall of Councils. Behind them, 2 guards followed silently, but Zira could feel something was wrong. The attack last night hadn't been random. Someone had planned it carefully, someone with access to palace security systems. I still don't understand, Evan whispered. Why would someone want to kill me? I'm just a junior envoy. Zyra didn't look at him. You're not just anything anymore. Zabond has made you a threat. Evan frowned. That doesn't matter to those who fear change, she said. In the eyes of many, you've already broken a sacred line. They entered the council hall. The air inside was heavy with tension. The Empress sat at the far end of the room, her face calm but cold. Around her stood the Royal Council, 12 noble Varelians dressed in shimmering robes. Each one a powerful figure in the Empire. Zyra and Evan stopped before them. We must speak clearly, said Councillor Drahan, an elder with sharp eyes. Last night's attack was only the beginning. There are those who will not tolerate a bond between a Varelian heir and an Earthborn soldier. It was not our choice, Zyra said firmly, but it is real. Another councillor, Lady Varen, stepped forward. Then it must be broken. Evans, fist clenched. How? Zyra looked at her mother. Tell them the truth. The bond cannot be broken without both minds rejecting it. And I do not reject it. The Empress stood slowly, and if the human also accepts it, then you will be hunted. Both of you. Silence fell over the chamber. Then the Empress spoke again. For your safety, and for the sake of political balance, you are to be taken to the temple sanctuary outside the city. There the bond will be studied by the high seers. You will remain under watch. You will not leave. Zyra's eyes narrowed. So you want to hide us? It's for your protection, the Empress said. Zyra bowed slightly, though her voice was sharp. Then we obey. For now. That night, the escapers later, Zyra paced in her chambers. She could feel Evan's presence even before he knocked. You heard? She asked. He nodded. They're locking us away. Say it's to study the bond, Zyra said. But it's a prison. I don't trust the high seers. They may try to force a severing. And if they do, Evan asked, if they try to sever it while the bond is growing, it could kill one of us, or both. Evan stared at her. Then, we run. Zyra looked at him for a long moment. Running will make us fugitives. And let's be fugitives, he said. A faint smile touched her lips. Very well. I know a path through the lower tunnels. We leave before sunrise. Through the crystal tunnels just before dawn, Evan and Zyra slipped through a hidden gate behind the palace gardens. They wore traveler cloaks and carried only what they needed: water, food, and a hidden map. The tunnels beneath the palace were ancient. Walls of smooth stone and cracked crystals stretched for miles beneath the royal city. The light was dim, glowing softly from strange moss that lived in the dark. Evan followed closely, trusting Zyra's every step. Where are we going? He asked quietly. To the crystal forest, she replied. There's a place called Relane's Mirror. It's where ancient Varelians used to meditate when the bonds still happen more often. It's quiet, safe, sacred. No one will look for us there. No one who fears the old ways, she said. They walked for hours, resting only. Once, the air in the tunnels grew cooler. The walls shimmered faintly, but as they neared the exit, they heard something metal footsteps. Loud, heavy. Zyra pulled Evan to the side and pressed him against the wall. Her hand over his mouth, a squad of armored guards passed, carrying energy weapons and light scanning devices. They were being hunted already. Once the guards were gone, Zyra whispered, We must move faster. Glimpse into each other by evening, they reached the edge of the crystal forest tall. Glowing trees stretched into the sky, their branches humming softly in the wind. It felt like the whole forest was alive, watching. Listening, they made a small camp near a pool of water that reflected the stars above. As they sat together, sharing food, Zyra became quiet. Evan looked at her. You're thinking about the bond? Yes, she admitted. It's changing us, already, he nodded. I felt it too. Sometimes I know what you're about to say before you say it. Sometimes I feel your memories, she whispered. Flashes of earth. A child holding a wooden sword. A goodbye to someone before war. Evan was silent for a moment. That's real. Zyra touched the water. The bond is not just emotion. It's truth. It shows everything, even the parts we try to hide. She looked at him. Evan, are you afraid of me? He shook his head. No, I'm afraid for you, because your own people may turn against you. Zira's eyes glowed slightly. Then I'm not alone in this. They sat in silence, their thoughts gently merging. For a few moments, they didn't need words. They simply understood. Danger comes again, the peace didn't last long. At dawn, while the sun was just rising behind the mountains, a sharp sound cut through the forest, a signal drone. Zira stood quickly. They found us, from above, small. Flying scouts scanned the area. Behind them, a new group of warriors emerged. This time, dressed in black, shadow guards. Zira whispered, They don't answer to the Empress. They answer to the Council. Evan pulled out his energy baton. We can't fight all of them, no, she said, but we can outsmart them. They ran deeper into the forest. Zira knew the terrain better. She led Evan through narrow paths, behind glowing stone columns and waterfalls. But the shadow guards were fast. One of them fired a pulse shot that hit the ground near Evan's feet. The force knocked him back, and he hit the ground hard. Zira turned, fury in her eyes. She launched herself at the guard, her blade flashing. In seconds, the guard was down. She ran to Evan, lifting him with both hands. You're hurt. I'm fine, he lied, but his side was bleeding. Zira placed her hand on his wound. Her palm began to glow with a soft blue light. Healing energy flowed through her fingers. Evan gasped. In that moment, their minds touched more deeply than ever before. He saw flashes of her childhood, her training, her lonely nights under a cold sky. She saw his pain, his doubts, his strength. When the light faded, Evan's wound was closed, and both of them were shaking. That wasn't just healing, he said. No, she whispered. It was bonding. Arrival at the mirror by nightfall. They reached at Trelline's mirror, a quiet lake surrounded by floating stones. The air was still. Time seemed to stop here. This place is protected, Zira said. No one can harm us here, not while the bond is growing. Evan stood beside her, looking into the lake. What happens now? Zira looked at him. Now we choose. Choose what? She turned to face him. Whether we accept this bond fully or run from it forever. Evan stepped closer. What do you choose? Zira's voice trembled. I don't want to lose who I am, but I don't want to lose you either. Evan smiled softly. Then don't. You don't have to be someone else to be with me. I see you, Zira, and I accept you. Their hands touched, and then light exploded around them. The lake shimmered, the air veered, and the bond fully awakened. They didn't just feel each other now. They were connected. One heartbeat. Two souls. The light around Evan and Zira slowly faded as they stood beside Ralene's mirror. Their hands still touched, and an invisible thread connected their souls. Their minds could feel each other's thoughts, feelings, and even fears. Zira looked. At Evan, her eyes soft but full of determination. The bond is real now. There's no going back. Evan nodded. We have to face it together, whatever comes. Their return to the palace, despite the danger, they decided to return to the palace to face the truth and confront those who wanted to separate them. Their journey back was tense and quiet. They avoided the usual roads and walked under the cover of darkness. Upon arrival, the royal guards stopped them immediately. The Empress herself appeared, flanked by high-ranking council members. Her face was calm, but unreadable. You have returned, she said, and the bond has awakened. Zira stepped forward. Yes, Mother, it is true. I accept it. The Empress looked to Evan. And you, human? Do you accept the bond with the princess? Evan met her gaze steadily. I did from the moment we met. A murmur spread through the crowd. Some gasped. Others whispered the council was divided. The trial begins. Counselor Drayan. The elder who had spoken before raised his hand to silence the murmurs. The bond between a Varelian, royal, and a human is unprecedented, he said. This court must decide if it is acceptable or treasonous. The trial was called. Zira and Evan stood side by side as the council members questioned them. They were asked about their feelings, their loyalty, and the nature of their bond. Zira spoke first. This bond is not a weakness. It is strength. It connects us beyond words, Evan added. It has opened my eyes to a new way of seeing. Not as enemies or strangers, but as partners. Counselor Varen sneered. You are blinded by love and foolishness. The Empire will fall if such bonds are allowed. Zria held her ground. Then maybe the Empire needs to change. Revealing the true enemy during the trial. Evan and Zyra presented evidence they had discovered during their escape. They exposed the mastermind behind the attacks, a high-ranking noble who feared the peace with humans and sought to keep the Empire at war. The council members were shocked. The Empress nodded slowly. This treason cannot be ignored. The noble was arrested. The council's opinion began to shift. Zira's declaration in the final moments of the trial. Zira faced the council with courage. I will not deny my bond with Evan. Together, we are stronger than any fear or hatred. She looked at the Empress. I ask for your blessing, Mother, to stand beside him and build a future with our two peoples united. The Empress was silent for a moment. Then, slowly, she said, So be it. The room erupted in whispers and some applause. A new path at the trial. Evan and Zyrea walked together in the palace gardens. The bond between them was stronger than ever. They knew challenges would come, but together they would face anything. Zyrea smiled softly. I'm still not sure why you looked at me like that, human. Evan grinned. 'Cause I saw someone brave enough to look back. They held hands, ready to lead a new era of peace and unity. The Great Hall was packed. Borellians and humans alike had gathered to witness history being made. The crystal walls sparkled with the soft light of floating orbs, casting reflections on the faces of everyone present. At the front, Princess Zyra stood tall and proud beside Evan Reyes. They were no longer just an alien princess and a human soldier. They were partners, bonded by a connection deeper than any political alliance. The Empress stood behind them, her expression both proud and cautious. The ceremony of unity, the ceremony began with the high priests chanting ancient words, their voices weaving through the air like music. Zyria took Evan's hand, her eyes shining. Today, she said, we honor not only the bond between two individuals, but the bond between two peoples. This connection is the beginning of a new future, one built on trust, respect, and hope. Evan smiled warmly. When I first looked into Zyra's eyes, I did not know what would happen. But now I know. We are stronger together. The crowd erupted into applause. Challenges ahead after the ceremony. Not all were pleased. Some nobles whispered behind closed doors. Some warriors grumbled that tradition had been broken, but the tide was turning. Evan and Zyria received messages of support from young warriors eager for change, from scholars who believed in peace, and even from distant human colonies, building the alliance over the next months. Evan and Zyrea worked tirelessly. They traveled between Earth and Virilia, meeting leaders, solving problems, and sharing stories. The bond between them remained strong. Their minds often connected in ways that helped them understand each other. Deeply, they faced danger, 2 attempted sabotage, spies, and old enemies trying to tear them apart, but together, they always found a way, a moment of peace one evening, after a long day of talks. Evan and Zyrea sat on a quiet hill overlooking the Virelian capital. The stars twinkled above like diamonds on velvet. Zyrea leaned her head on Evan's shoulder. Do you still wonder why I looked at you like that? She asked softly. Evan smiled. Every day. But now I think I understand. What's that? That it wasn't just a look. What? It was the start of everything. They sat in silence, the bond between them glowing brighter than the stars. The future begins. The story of the human who looked into the eyes of an alien princess and changed a galaxy spread far and wide. Their bond became a symbol of hope, proof that even the deepest divides could be crossed, and as the sun rose on a new day, Evan and Zareya stood hand in hand, ready to face whatever challenges awaited, together.